Hello everyone and welcome. If you have ever felt a bit lost staring at the methodology chapter of your thesis or research paper, wondering where to even begin, you're in the right place. Today we're going to demystify this crucial section and break it down into simple, actionable steps. Think of your methodology as the blueprint for your research project. It's the detailed plan that shows exactly how you're going to answer your research question. Why is it important? A methodology ensures that research is systematic, transparent, and reproducible. It guides the researcher's approach from data collection to analysis, making the research process more structured and credible. A strong methodology is what gives your study credibility. It proves to your readers that your findings are reliable and your process was sound. So by the end of this session, you'll have a clear roadmap for crafting a robust methodology, understanding all its key components, and knowing how to apply them directly to your own work. Let's get started. First up is the foundation of your entire study, your research design. This is your overall strategy for answering your research question. The big decision here is whether you'll use a qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods approach. Let's break those down. Qualitative research is all about exploring ideas and experiences in depth. It deals with non-numerical data like interview transcripts or observations. Think of it as painting a rich, detailed picture of a specific phenomenon. Example, if you're studying human behavior, a qualitative approach would help capture deep insights, such as understanding how people feel in certain situations. You might use this to understand people's feelings, beliefs, or behaviors. On the other hand, quantitative research is all about numbers and statistics. It's used to test hypotheses, measure variables, and generalize results to a larger population. If you want to find out how many or how often, you're likely in the quantitative camp. Example, in studying the relationship between exercise and health outcomes, quantitative methods such as statistical surveys would allow you to quantify the impact. And then there's the mixed methods approach, which, as you might guess, combines both. This gives you the best of both worlds, the broad, generalizable data from quantitative methods and the rich, contextual understanding from qualitative ones. The most important thing here isn't just picking one, but justifying your choice. Why is a qualitative approach the best way to explore your topic? For example, if you're studying the lived experiences of first-generation college students, a qualitative design using in-depth interviews would be perfect for capturing their unique stories and challenges. Justification. The choice of research design depends on the research question, the type of data needed, and the context. Researchers should justify their choice of design based on the goals of the study. Now take a moment to think about your own research topic. Which design feels like the right fit? Pause the video and jot down a sentence or two explaining why. Once you've settled on your research design, the next logical step is to decide on your data collection methods. How are you actually going to gather the information you need? The options are vast. If you're doing quantitative research, you might use surveys with multiple choice questions, run experiments in a controlled setting, or analyze existing statistical data. Example, if you're conducting research on customer satisfaction, a survey is an efficient way to collect data from a large sample of customers. For qualitative research, your toolkit might include one-on-one interviews, focus groups, or detailed observations. Example, in a study on workplace stress, you might interview employees to gain insight into their personal experiences and coping mechanisms. Each method has its strengths. Surveys are great for reaching a large number of people quickly. Interviews allow you to dig deep into an individual's perspective. Experiments are the gold standard for establishing cause and effect relationships. You'll also need to think about the specific tools or instruments you'll use. Experiments are used to test hypotheses and involve manipulating variables to observe outcomes. Example, to test the effects of a new drug, you would conduct a controlled experiment where one group receives the drug and another receives a placebo. Again, you must justify your choice. If you decide on a survey, explain why it's more suitable than interviews for your specific research question. For instance, if you're trying to gauge student satisfaction across an entire university, a survey is far more practical than trying to interview thousands of students. Now, let's make this practical. Think about your project again. What specific data do you need? And what's the most effective method to collect it? Okay, so you know how you're going to collect your data, but from whom? This brings us to our next crucial component, your sampling strategy. It's usually impossible to study everyone in a group you're interested in. That's your population. Population refers to the entire group that a researcher wants to study. Sample size is the number of participants selected from that population. It is crucial to choose a sample size that is representative of the population for valid results. For example, if you're studying college athletes in the United States, that population is huge. So instead, you select a smaller group, a sample that represents the larger population. The first step is defining your population clearly. Then you decide on your sample size, sampling techniques, random sampling. Every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. Stratified sampling. The population is divided in two subgroups and participants are randomly selected from each subgroup. Purposive sampling. Participants are selected based on specific characteristics or criteria relevant to the study. This isn't just a random number. It often depends on your research design and statistical needs. After that, you choose a sampling technique. There are many, but let's cover a few common ones. Random sampling is like pulling names out of a hat. Everyone in the population has an equal chance of being selected. Stratified sampling involves dividing your population into subgroups or strata, say, by year of study, and then taking a random sample from each group. This ensures you have representation from all the important subgroups. Let's try a quick scenario. Imagine you're studying the specific challenges faced by part-time doctoral students. Which sampling technique would you use? You'd likely go with purposive sampling because you need to find people who fit that very specific profile. Think about your own study. Who is your population and what's the best way to select a representative sample from it? Now that you have your data, what are you going to do with it? This is where data analysis comes in. Your plan for analysis should be decided before you even collect your data, as it can influence how you gather it. The methods you use will depend entirely on your research design. If you collected quantitative data from a survey, you'll be using statistical techniques. This could involve descriptive statistics like mean, median, and mode to summarize your data, or inferential statistics like t-tests or regression analysis to test your hypotheses. A well-written data analysis methods section should contain sufficient detail so that other researchers can replicate your study and verify your findings. This is a fundamental principle of scientific research. Reproducibility ensures that findings are robust and not merely the result of chance or researcher error. Software like SPSS or even Excel can be incredibly helpful here. Example for quantitative, given that the research questions address differences between groups and relationships between variables, a quantitative approach using inferential statistics was appropriate. This deductive approach allowed for hypothesis testing based on the conceptual framework established in the literature. If you collected qualitative data like interview transcripts, your approach will be different. You won't be crunching numbers. Instead, you might use something like thematic analysis, where you'll read through your data, identify recurring patterns or ideas, and organize them into themes. This helps you interpret the meanings within your data. Software like Nivivo can help you code and organize large amounts of text. For a mixed methods study, you'll do both. You might analyze the numbers first and then use the qualitative data to help explain those results, or vice versa. Let's imagine you've just completed 10 in-depth interviews. How would you start analyzing that data? You'd probably begin by transcribing them, then reading through carefully, highlighting interesting quotes, and starting to group similar ideas together. Last but by no means least, we need to talk about ethical considerations. Research involves people, and it's our absolute duty to protect their rights, dignity, and well-being. This isn't just a box to tick. It's a fundamental part of your research design that demonstrates the integrity of your work. You need to think about any potential ethical issues and explain how you will address them. A cornerstone of ethical research is informed consent. This means your participants must fully understand what the research involves, any potential risks or benefits, and that their participation is completely voluntary before they agree to take part. Another key principle is confidentiality or anonymity. How will you protect your participants' identities? Will you use pseudonyms? How will you store your data like interview recordings or completed surveys securely so that unauthorized people can't access it? You also need to consider any potential harm. Could your research cause psychological distress? If so, what measures will you have in place to support your participants, such as providing information on counseling services? These considerations can sometimes shape your research, placing constraints on what you can do. For example, if you're working with a vulnerable population, you'll need to take extra steps to ensure their safety. Let's apply this. If your research involves discussing sensitive personal experiences, what specific steps would you outline in your methodology to ensure your participants' data remains confidential and they feel safe? Throughout the process, thinking through these questions is critical for responsible research. All right, let's quickly recap. A strong methodology has 5 key components: your research design, your data collection methods, your sampling strategy, your data analysis plan, and your ethical considerations. Wrap up by summarizing the key points discussed in the session: research design, qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods data collection methods. Surveys, interviews, experiments, and observations sampling strategy, random, stratified, and purposive sampling data analysis, thematic analysis, and software tools ethical considerations, addressing constraints and ensuring integrity. Each part builds on the last to create a logical and convincing argument for how you will conduct your research. The golden rule is justification. Always explain why you are making these choices. I hope this breakdown helps you feel more confident in tackling your own methodology chapter. Do you have any questions? Drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more tips on navigating your research journey.